In the eastern stables of the Alpha King's fortress, a small boy sleeps each night in the hay, invisible to everyone but the wolves who guard him. They say his mother is just the wolfless Maid, a defect scrubbing filth to hide a son who shouldn't exist. But when Alpha King Maxwood discovers the child shivering among the horses, something about the boy's scent stops him cold. The way the stable wolves bow their heads, the familiar curve of his sleeping face, and the question that will shatter everything Max thought he knew: why would his own sworn animals protect a servant's bastard child with their lives? What bond exists between this boy and his kingdom that even Max himself doesn't understand? And what will the Alpha King do when he discovers the truth his maid has been hiding in plain sight for 7 years? Before we dive in, I want to know, where are you listening from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Ashley's hands were bleeding again. 8 years of scrubbing the same stone floors, and still her knuckles split open on the roughest patches. She kept her head down as the Queen's procession swept past, silks rustling like whispered judgments. No one looked at her. They never did. From the corner of her eye, she caught him. Alpha King Maxwood, massive frame filling the doorway to the great hall, dark hair catching torchlight. Her chest tightened the way it always did when he was near. The way it had been tightening for 8 years. He laughed at something his advisor said, the sound warm and easy. Ashley pressed her rag harder against the stone. He didn't know she existed. He'd never known. Stable boy. Stable boy. Ashley's head snapped up. Through the servants' entrance, she could see the courtyard where Morgan stood alone, surrounded by the steward's children. A girl with ribbons in her hair was singing it like a taunt. Sleeps with horses, smells like hay, stable boy won't ever play. Morgan's small hands balled into fists, but he didn't cry. 7 years old, and he'd already learned that tears only made it worse. Ashley abandoned her bucket and moved toward the door, but stopped. If she defended him, they'd ask questions. They always asked questions when she showed too much care for the boy. Then the wolves came. 3 of them, gray and massive, materialized from the shadows near the kennels. They didn't growl or snap. They simply positioned themselves around Morgan, a living barrier of fur and muscle. The steward's children scattered, screaming. Ashley sagged against the doorframe. The wolves always found him. She didn't understand it, but she'd stopped questioning it years ago. That night in the stables, she tucked Morgan into the hay pile they'd claimed as theirs. He looked up at her with those amber eyes that were nothing like hers and everything like his father's. Mama? His voice was so small. Why don't I have a papa like the other children? The question she'd been dreading for 7 years. Ashley smoothed his blonde hair, her throat closing. You have me, sweetheart. That's enough. But his face told her the truth they both knew. It wasn't enough. It had never been enough. And somewhere in the palace above them, the man who could change everything was laughing with his advisors, completely unaware that his son was falling asleep in the cold. What would it take for Maxwood to finally see what the wolves already knew? Stay with me to find out what happens when a king discovers the truth hidden in his own stables. Maxwood couldn't sleep. 3 nights since he'd found the boy in the stables, and those eyes kept haunting him. Amber. The exact shade that stared back at him from every mirror, every polished shield. A color so rare in their bloodline that his own father had called it the mark of true alphas. He told himself it was coincidence. Plenty of children had light eyes. But then he'd seen the boy in the courtyard that afternoon, watching the guards train. The way Morgan stood, feet planted wide, shoulders back, chin lifted. It was a stance Maxwood's own training master had drilled into him as a child. Dominant. Unmistakable. No one taught servant children to stand like that. Tell me about the boy who sleeps in the stables. Maxwood kept his voice casual as his head steward poured wine that evening. The man's hand trembled slightly. Your Majesty? The blonde child. I've seen him around the horses. Just a servant's son, sire. Nothing to concern yourself with. Maxwood's fingers tightened on his glass. Which servant? Silence stretched too long. His advisors exchanged glances that made his wolf prowl beneath his skin. I asked you a question. Ashley, Your Majesty. The steward's voice dropped. The quiet blonde one. Works the lower floors. She keeps to herself. Ashley. The name hit him like a fist to the chest. For a moment he couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the sudden flood of memory he'd buried for 8 years. Blonde hair spilling over his pillows. Soft hands trembling against his chest. The night before his wedding, drowning in wine and rage at the marriage he didn't want. A maid who'd brought him more bottles and stayed when he'd asked. Blue eyes full of something he'd been too drunk to name. He'd woken alone to his wedding day and never thought of her again. Until now. How old is the boy? His voice sounded strange, distant. 7, I believe, Your Majesty. The room tilted. 7 years. The math was brutally simple. Maxwood stood so abruptly his chair crashed backward. His advisors jumped, but he was already moving toward the door, toward the servants' wing, toward answers that terrified him. Because if that boy was his, if Ashley had carried his child and he'd never known, if his own son had been sleeping in stables while he paraded his legitimate daughter through banquets, what kind of king did that make him? What kind of man? And more importantly, what was he going to do about it now? If you want to know what happens when Maxwood finally confronts the truth. Chapter 3. Maxwood found her in the kitchen long after midnight, scrubbing pots that were already clean. He didn't announce himself. Just grabbed her arm and hauled her into the narrow corridor outside, slamming the door behind them. Ashley's back hit the stone wall, her eyes wide with terror. Is he mine? Her lips trembled, but no sound came out. Answer me. His voice cracked like thunder. Is that boy mine? Yes. The word was barely a whisper, but it detonated between them like a bomb. Maxwood staggered backward, his hand bracing against the opposite wall. For a long moment, neither of them breathed. Why didn't you tell me? His voice was raw, broken. 7 years, Ashley. 7 goddamn years. The laugh that escaped her was bitter, edged with hysteria. I tried. Liar. 3 times. Her voice rose, 8 years of silence finally shattering. I requested an audience 3 times when I realized I was pregnant. 3 times your guards turned me away. The king doesn't see servant girls. Those were their exact words. Maxwood's jaw clenched. You should have insisted. Forced your way. Forced my way. Ashley's hands shook. I'm a maid. Do you have any idea what happens to servant girls who make demands of kings? Your guards would have beaten me for the insult. Had me whipped for insolence. I would never. You didn't even remember my name. Tears streamed down her face now. I watched you marry her. Watched you smile at your beautiful Luna while I vomited every morning in the scullery. She was already pregnant, Maxwood. Already carrying your legitimate child. What was I supposed to do? March into your wedding feast and announce you'd fathered a bastard on a servant? The truth of it hit him like a blade between the ribs. Your daughter, Ashley continued, her voice breaking. She deserves her birthright. And Morgan deserves better than being the mistake that destroyed a kingdom. Maxwood went very still. What did you say? Your Luna gave you a daughter. A legitimate heir. But pack law demands a male successor. Ashley's blue eyes met his hollow with resignation. If you acknowledge Morgan, everything changes. Your daughter loses everything. Your marriage becomes a political disaster. And my son becomes the most hated child in this palace. He's my son too. Is he? Ashley's voice dropped to something dangerous. Because for 7 years, he's been mine alone. You don't get to claim him now just to ease your conscience. But the damage was already done. They both knew it. Because somewhere in the royal wing, Maxwood's mate slept peacefully, unaware that her daughter's future had just been thrown into question by a boy sleeping in the stables. I want to meet him. Ashley's face went white. No. He's my son. I have a right. You have nothing. Her voice cracked. Please, Maxwood. He doesn't know. If you walk into his life now and then abandon him when this gets complicated, it will destroy him. But Maxwood was already walking toward the stables. He found Morgan mucking out stalls, his small frame dwarfed by the massive war horses. The boy looked up, recognized him, and immediately dropped into an awkward bow. "Your Majesty." Maxwood's throat closed. His son was bowing to him like a stranger. "What's your name?" He already knew. He needed to hear it. "Morgan, sire." The boy's amber eyes were wary, waiting for punishment he'd learned to expect. "Do you like working with the horses?" Morgan relaxed slightly. "Yes, sire. They're kind. Not like people." The casual cruelty of that observation gutted him. "What do you want to be when you grow up?" "A stable master." Morgan's face brightened for the first time. So the horses always have someone kind caring for them. Someone who makes sure they're never cold or hungry. Maxwood had to look away. This boy, his blood, his heir by rights, dreamed of nothing more than ensuring animals weren't neglected. Meanwhile, his daughter was being tutored in strategy, diplomacy, pack politics. She knew she was destined for greatness. Morgan knew he was destined for stables. "I brought you something." Maxwood pulled the carved wolf from his coat. He'd spent all night whittling it, his hands remembering a skill his own father had taught him. Morgan's eyes went wide. He reached out, then pulled back. "For me?" "Yes." The boy took it with trembling hands, cradling it like it was made of glass. Then he looked up, and the question he asked shattered what was left of Maxwood's heart. "Why are you being nice to me, sir?" Maxwood knelt in the hay, bringing himself eye level with his son. "Because you deserve kindness, Morgan." "But I'm nobody." "You're not." Maxwood's voice broke. He wanted to tell him. "I wanted to say you're my son, you're a prince, you're everything." But Ashley's warning echoed in his mind. "If you abandon him after this, it will destroy him." And Maxwood couldn't promise he wouldn't. Not with his wife, his daughter, his entire wolf pack standing in the way. So instead he just said, "Keep the wolf. You're worth more than you know." Morgan clutched the carving to his chest, confused but hopeful. Maxwood walked away before he could make promises he might have to break. But one question burned in his mind. How do you choose between the son you abandoned and the daughter you raised? Rumors reached Queen Eleanor before breakfast. Maxwood knew the moment she entered his study. Her face was composed, controlled, but her scent was pure rage. "Tell me it's not true." Her voice was ice. "Tell me you didn't acknowledge a servant's bastard." "Eleanor." "Don't." She slammed both hands on his desk. "The entire palace is whispering that you have a son. A common maid's child. Do you have any idea what this does to our daughter? He's 7 years old and sleeping in stables." Maxwood roared back. "My own blood, freezing in hay, and I didn't even know he existed because I was too drunk to remember his mother's face. So your guilt is my problem now?" Eleanor's laugh was vicious. "You want to destroy everything we've built because you feel bad? He's my son." "And what is Isabel?" Eleanor's voice cracked. "She's your daughter. Your legitimate heir. The child I gave you after 3 miscarriages and a birth that nearly killed me. What is she to you now that you've found your precious boy?" Maxwood opened his mouth, but no words came. "Pack law is clear." Eleanor's eyes glittered. "A male heir takes precedence. The moment you acknowledge that stable boy, Isabel becomes nothing. Second choice. The daughter who wasn't good enough because she wasn't born male. I would never." "You already are." Eleanor was shaking now. "Every lord in this kingdom is already calculating. If you have a son, a true alpha male, why would they follow a girl? You're destroying her future to ease your conscience." "What was I supposed to do? Pretend he doesn't exist?" "Yes." The word exploded from her. "Yes, Maxwood. That's exactly what kings do. We make impossible choices. We sacrifice personal feelings for the good of the realm. He's a child. So is Isabel." Eleanor's voice dropped to something deadly quiet. "So choose. Your legitimate family or your guilt. But know this, if you raise that boy up, you don't just hurt our daughter. You make her a target. Every rival pack will see her as weak, disposable. Is your conscience worth her birthright? Her safety? Her life? The words hung between them like a blade. Outside the study door, hidden in the shadows, Ashley pressed her hand over her mouth to keep from sobbing. She'd heard every word, understood exactly what her truth had done. Queen Eleanor swept toward the door, then paused. That boy has survived 7 years without you. Isabel has only ever known you as her father. Don't punish her for your mistakes. The door slammed shut. Maxwood stood alone in the wreckage, knowing that whatever choice he made, someone he loved would be destroyed. But what he didn't know is that Ashley had already made the choice for him. Ashley found Maxwood in his chambers after midnight, staring at nothing. Send us away. He turned, startled. She'd never come to his private rooms before. Never dared. Give us money to start over somewhere else. Your daughter deserves her birthright and Morgan. Her voice cracked. Morgan deserves better than being the bastard who destroyed a pack. No. Maxwood stood, his massive frame towering. He's my son. I won't abandon him again. You never abandoned him the first time. Ashley's composure shattered. You didn't know he existed. But now you do know, and choosing him anyway isn't noble, Maxwood. It's selfish. Selfish. You want to ease your guilt while Morgan becomes the most hated child in this palace. Tears streamed down her face. Every servant already whispers about him. Every noble will see him as the threat to Princess Isabel. He'll spend his whole life being the mistake that ruined everything. I can protect him. From what? From being resented by your wife? From watching your daughter hate him for stealing her future? From knowing that every privilege he receives comes at her expense? Maxwood's jaw clenched. What are you asking me to do? Let us go. Ashley pulled a worn letter from her pocket. I have a sister. Northern Territories, 3 weeks' travel. She has a small farm, a kind husband. I've been planning this for months. His face went white. Months? I knew this day would come eventually. Someone would notice his eyes. Ask questions. She wiped her tears roughly. I'll take Morgan. Raise him away from all this. Let him be happy. Let him think his father was a good man who died before he was born. You want me to pretend he doesn't exist? I want you to let him have a life. Her voice broke completely. Don't make him spend his childhood knowing his father chose duty over him. Don't make him watch from the shadows while Isabel gets everything he can have. Please, Maxwood. If you ever cared about me, if you care about him at all, let us disappear. I can't. But his voice was hollow. You have to. Ashley stepped closer. Because if you don't, I'll watch my son grow up hated. I'll watch him become bitter and broken. And I'll know it's because I was selfish enough to tell you the truth. For a long moment, Maxwood said nothing. Then his shoulders shook. This massive alpha king, who'd never shown weakness, who'd fought wars and commanded armies, crumpled. He wept. Ashley wanted to comfort him. But this wasn't about him anymore. I'll leave at dawn, she whispered. Don't try to stop me. But what she didn't know was that Maxwood had one final card to play. One impossible solution that would change everything. The great hall fell silent when Maxwood took the dais. Ashley stood in the back, Morgan clutched against her side, both of them dressed in the same worn servant clothes they'd packed for their escape. She'd been halfway to the gates when guards found her. The king demands your presence, they'd said. Now she watched him, this man who'd destroyed and saved her in equal measure, preparing to make his choice public. Eleanor sat rigid on her throne, Isabel beside her. The little princess looked terrified. I have called this assembly, Maxwood's voice carried across the hall, to address rumors that have plagued this court. Ashley's heart hammered. This was it. The formal rejection. The public humiliation before they were cast out. 7 years ago, I fathered a son. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Eleanor's face went white. His name is Morgan. His mother is Ashley, who has served this palace with honor and silence. Maxwood's eyes found hers across the crowd. And I have been a coward. Ashley couldn't breathe. Pack law demands I choose between my children. That I elevate one and diminish the other. His voice hardened. I reject that law. The hall erupted. Maxwood raised his hand for silence. Princess Isabel will inherit the Southern Territories, the political heart of our kingdom. She will be groomed for diplomacy, for alliance, for the delicate art of peace. Eleanor leaned forward, confused. Prince Morgan will inherit the northern wilds, the warrior lands. He will be trained in combat, in protection, in the strength that guards our borders. The crowd went silent, understanding dawning. I am dividing the kingdom. Both my children will be legitimate. Both will be royalty. Both will rule. That's impossible, someone shouted. It's unprecedented, Maxwood corrected. There's a difference. He descended from the dais, walking straight toward Ashley. The crowd parted like water. Lady Ashley of the Northern Court, he said formally, loud enough for everyone to hear. You will serve as Morgan's guardian and advisor. You will raise him as befits a prince. Ashley stared at him. Maxwood. It's not love, he said quietly, just for her. That ship sailed 8 years ago. But it's respect. Partnership. A shared commitment to our son. She understood. This wasn't a fairy tale. He wasn't choosing her. He was choosing Morgan. Finally, Maxwood knelt in front of the boy, meeting those amber eyes. Do you accept your birthright, Prince Morgan? Morgan looked up at Ashley, terrified. Mama? She knelt beside him, cupping his face with trembling hands. You were always a prince, sweetheart. Your father just needed time to see what the wolves knew all along. Morgan's small hand clutched the carved wolf still in his pocket. Am I really a prince? Yes, Maxwood said. You are. Later, as servants fitted Morgan for proper clothes, Ashley watched from the doorway. Maxwood stood beside her, not touching, just present. Thank you, she whispered. Don't. I should have seen him years ago. In the courtyard below, Isabel was watching her new brother with cautious curiosity instead of hatred. Eleanor's face was unreadable, but she hadn't protested. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. But Morgan wasn't sleeping in stables anymore. And sometimes, that was enough.